travel adventures. It is little wonder that by the mid-70s, the Gordon Fives' fascination with travel adventures was manifest, partly because of the decadent lure of Florida's Disney attractions, and partly due to the proximity to Esso Caribbean's headquarters in Coral Gables. We would, as a family of 5, make frequent pilgrimages to our favorite ride for the imaginative traveler, It's a Small World. We would spontaneously break into the theme song whenever or wherever we traveled. And this continued until grandchildren came along and increased the family size to 13, including spouses. It was impossible to constrain our joie de vivre with all and sundry whenever we landed at a Disney resort. Quote, though some would divide and the oceans are wide, it's a small world after all. For there's just one moon and one golden sun, and a smile means friendship to everyone. Until fairly recently, Florida was a happy, welcoming environment, internationally recognized as the modern mecca of freedom, fairness, fun, and fantasy, which, as true patrons, we have a sacred purpose to preserve for our progeny, ourselves, and posterity. It could also be said that where there is no Disney, for the delights of diversity disappear. When first conceived, the Disney ride was called Children of the World, founded on similar principles as was the United Nations a few years earlier. It was believed that a theme park attraction could be a powerful way to teach children about the importance of tolerance and cooperation. But what would be done where the opposite outcome is desired? Say, a divergent desire to inculcate social norms which promote divisiveness, not inclusiveness, which encourage discrimination, not diversity, and with a plan to instill autocracy, not democracy. The major populated destinations represented in It's a Small World ride were the British Isles, Western and Eastern Europe, Asia, Africa, and South America. All of the initial 5-member Magic Kingdom Gordon clan have travelled to the British Isles, as well as their spouses and children. This is understandable, as my 3 children's given names are Irish, Scottish, and English. But even before we were a thing, the person whom I would meet and marry embarked from Kingston Harbour on April 14, 1962, on the RMS Rangitata, which had left Wellington on 24th March for England via Kingston, Port Everglades, and Bermuda. Independently, I travelled unspectacularly, by comparison, a few months later from New York on the Cunard cruise liner Queen Mary. To be fair, Monica's voyage on this, her second time travelling to the mother country, was decidedly scary. The pleasant ambience of the vessel was devastated by a full day's buzzing of low-flying enemy aircraft as they approached Cuban waters. This aerial onslaught sent dishes and deck chairs flying. Passengers and crew scoured below for safe space, emergency style, or in their staterooms and cabins. Mayhem let loose, and the vessel was bombarded on port and starboard, which disrupted the boat's smooth passage. Monica found she was helplessly embroiled in one of those troubling, unprecedented events that predated the full-blown Soviet versus American nuclear conflagration, confidentially called the Cuban Missile Crisis of October 1962, which ended when the Soviet missiles' removal was verified at sea on November the 20th. Pouring oil on troubled waters is an old aphorism for soothing or, quote, to calm down something or someone. It came to life when Monica and I and the 2 British-born kids entered a real scary situation on the return voyage home in December 1969. We were on the Prince Danella landing, When on approaching the Azores, it was discovered that some form of fuel contamination prevented us from safely continuing. The boat's engines had to be shut down temporarily and a supply from another fuel tank connected. The sea was turbulent and the vessel was bobbing up and down and even went adrift for a while. But just before panic struck, a copious discharge of calming oil appeared on the surface and quelled the waves as a slick encircled our vessel. One of the most interesting sights on our 2016 tour of the British Isles on the Disney Magic with Patrick's family of 4 greeted us in Orkney. An immense yellow structure heaved into view. It was the world's most powerful tidal stream energy generator, Orbital Marine Power 2. A new 3-point OMW project in the same waters of the Scottish Orkney Islands is being commissioned in 2023. Scotland is the world leader in the development and deployment of wave and tidal energy technologies, which is good news for climate change advocates. The countries that boast nature's snow-capped alpine mountains, the decorative and timeless architecture of ancient Athens, and the artistic elegance of the Notre Dame Cathedral, the colossal engineering masterpiece of the Eiffel Tower, the Louvre's treasures of painting and sculpture, all reward travellers to Europe. And all of the Gordon clan have experienced travel to those touristic hotspots. Monica and I, for example, spent days of eye-popping pleasure in Spain and Portugal, absorbing their beautiful classical works of art and delectable cuisine in the unimaginable luxury of a first-class train as we were whisked to Lisbon, buoyed by Chopin's music and white-gloved waiter service. We were literally stunned by the warm hospitality of the Portuguese in the streets, the shops and markets, and the artistic decor of the Lisboa à Noche, the restaurant. A copy of the check is attached. Once also, we breakfasted leisurely on the business train from Paris to Brussels and accomplished our objectives in record time. In the discreet Swiss canton of Zug, we were surprised by their modern and business-like governance and institutions, and by the knowledge they had in the 14th century revolted against the Swiss government. The interpretation of a contract for supply during the oil crisis between the Jamaica refinery and an international supplier was drafted so that its terms would have to be interpreted by the laws of that canton. My legal opinion regarded that as prejudicial and opposed the deal through the notorious Mark Rich, an international middleman. He was later pardoned by American President Clinton as he debated office. Asia. My son, Patrick, has reported on the sensitivities and cultural norms of business travelers to China. My granddaughter, Gabrielle, enjoyed her summer sojourn as a Princeton student doing research on water conservation laws and techniques in India at the Hyderabad Institute. They got the opportunity to see the sights, including the Taj Mahal, through the perspective of their 24% and 25% respectively northern and eastern India genes. Africa. Only one of us has so far traveled to Africa. Patrick's extensive business travels as a consultant did not take him to Africa, but his love of cricket inspired him to join a group of fellow cricket enthusiasts to watch the series played in South Africa. He was impressed by the efficient hospitality, the management of resources, the wildlife and luxury train transport, exemplified in the Blue Train, and the vast expanse of nature that makes the South African landscape so admirable. Not to be outdone, its wines also have an excellent bouquet. My daughter Sonigay, son-in-law Richard and Gabrielle have made plans to travel to the cities of Cape Town in South Africa and Gaborone in Botswana in the coming year. South America. There are two unforgettably exciting moments in my travels in South America, which I reserve for special mention. The first was my travel as part of the UCII student tour to British Guiana in 1960, and represents the most rewarding aspect, which was getting to meet and communicate with bands of Aborigines in the hinterland, not too far from the golden-tinged river that flows for miles, then cascades into the spectacular 800-foot Kaieteur Falls. I gazed with awe at the porthole of the 15-seater propeller plane that flew halfway up the falls, and got a more intimate close-up view of the power and might of torrents of water falling down from an indescribable height, with the splash and splendor of a natural phenomenon of beauty that ranks as one of the most picturesque of its type in the world. About the second incident, I recall waking up to the crunching sounds of a ship as it crushed the coral reef. The accident belayed the timing of my getting out of Bermuda waters and sailing to England, and I was stressfully aware of being within the mysteriously dangerous triangle. The ship's hull had carved an indelible print as its weight drove it into the banks of coral reef. It stuck hard and fast on the living reef just offshore. The Reina del Pacifica was eventually tugged off its anchorage and was able to sail 12 days later. Fortunately, however, my group secured alternative transport by air to get to our destination in time for the Scout Jamboree's opening celebrations. I was remembering the airline pilot who sat in the row on the other side of the aisle in business class on the flight from Jacksonville to New York. He was empathetic when I explained my dilemma. The flight was scheduled to arrive at 8 p.m., and I was to attend a private party in the Yonkers area that began at 9. But I had never been to my Trinidadian host's address, and had no idea how I was going to get there. The pilot, a complete stranger with whom I had spoken for only 30 minutes, offered to take me to the venue, which would be a 10-mile diversion from the usual route he used to get home. He stopped briefly, had a Jamaica Red Stripe beer, then bade farewell to the host and myself. A good Samaritan, I was happy and appreciative of his kindness. The year was 1980. Our travel adventures have always reminded us how much we owe to the others, usually complete strangers who are of different faiths and cultures, but help to make our travel adventures come true. They more often than not help to heal the hate we hold for others we don't even know. We treasure those memories because they make a spiritual difference, changing hopefully for the better the way we think or act. That Disney ride helped. It made the world seem smaller for my family. It must have, based on the results, been a positive motivator of good and happy people. By appreciating others, we help to heal the hate of the other, which the anti-everything spoilers are always so focused on. Diversity, the way you wear your turban or your hat, culture, differences, the way you sip your tea. Frank Sinatra reminded us, the memory of all that. No, they can't take that away from me.